Toy Story has got to be one of the defining movie series of the last 50 years. I mean, not to hyperbolize, but this series had a chokehold on my generation unlike almost anything else. And now that Toy Story 5 is here, what better time to look back on the series and see how everything holds up. And so before I get into my ranking, I just want to recognize Pixar's work here, because even to this day, I think these are all brilliantly animated films. I mean, Toy Story is like Pixar's golden goose, so I know they put just so much thought and care and passion into every one of these. And when it comes to the animation and performances, these films all do really hold up. But I of course have to give a shout out to Randy Newman. His score is as important to these films as John Williams' score is to Star Wars. And it's part of what makes these films so unique and unlike anything else, with his score being both the rhythm and the heartbeat to these movies. And so with that being said, I have some pretty controversial takes. I'm not trying to hype it up, but I just don't find that I necessarily fall in line with everyone else when it comes to Toy Story. But I just want to remind everyone, I love all of these movies. I love Toy Story as a franchise, and I thought it would be a lot of fun to make an official ranking for myself and for anyone who might watch this. So let's get into it. So it comes as no surprise, but unfortunately, Toy Story 5 is at the bottom of my list. I mean, I am literally fresh out of the theater having watched Toy Story 5, but it has secured the dead last place on this list. And I will not be spoiling anything for anyone who has not seen the movie yet, but man, when I was about halfway through the movie, I was just ready to come in here and just completely hate on this. Even Pixar's worst films meet a relatively decent bar of quality, and so this is by no means a bad movie in my opinion. It just truly comes down to the fact that this movie is lacking the sauce that the other 4 films in the franchise have. And so when I say it comes dead last, that is really because the magic is for the most part gone, but it is hard to hate on this movie because it does have a very resonant emotional center to it, and that's the kind of part that Pixar always nails. But I guess my main criticism comes down to the fact that this was not a very engaging watch. And so this feels like the first Toy Story movie that is trying to be somewhat topical, as the main idea of the film tries to tackle how technology and electronics have become a bit of a problem for children. Bonnie is still the kid at the center of this movie, and the toys are primarily concerned with helping Bonnie make friends in a world that feels more isolated than ever. So it's funny to say that it is topical because this is something that they could have talked about even as far back as Toy Story 3, but the main moral and kind of emotion that they are trying to get across does work pretty well. It's just the moment-to-moment, scene-to-scene adventures of the toys are never very engaging, and it doesn't help that we cut back to a side plot that's even worse. And it might sound silly to criticize the animation of this film because it is still for the most part pretty beautiful, but I do think this is the first film in the franchise that actually doesn't feel like much of a step forward. I even thought this feels like the first 3D animated movie to be filmed in the volume. This unfortunately did feel a little bit like a streaming movie or something on Disney Plus that just didn't feel like it got the time and love that the other films that came before got, which is a common theme for the different parts of this movie. This is also the weakest score in any Toy Story film. Like, they incorporate some cliche classical motifs that end up feeling pretty out of place. And the villain here, Lily Pad, it's just a little bit too generic or run-of-the-mill, honestly. I don't think any of the new characters that we get here, aside from a human kid that we get, is actually memorable at all. The highlight is definitely how Jessie is the star of the show here. I think just the fact that it's not completely centered on Woody means that we get some new character beats. And Bonnie as a kid is sweet, even if I'm convinced that she's not aging at this point, just so they can keep making these movies forever. This film is just really lacking in surprise. The story never comes alive to the point where things feel dynamic, and Lilypad is just not strong enough of a character to create many new interesting situations. I do think there is a strong emotional core to this movie. That is something I'm going to enjoy more looking back on than I am while I'm watching. And so Toy Story 5 is unfortunately the most forgettable film in the series. And so, I'm just going to take this moment to remind everyone to please like and subscribe. Now, we're a small but growing channel, so I would appreciate it. But at number 4, we have Toy Story 3. Okay, so this has got to be my most controversial Toy Story take of all time, but it is just that I don't love Toy Story 3 that much. From the first moment that I saw it in 2009, something about it just did not work quite as much for me as it did for other people. That's not to say that I think it is a bad movie at all, because I don't. I think it's a really good movie. And so even though me and Toy Story 3, we just don't F with each other like that, I just can't deny how well crafted of a film it is. And so the story of Toy Story 3 goes, after 10 years since the events of Toy Story 2, Andy's going off to college, and due to a mix-up, all his toys end up at a daycare rather than up in the attic like he had intended. And so coming into this list, I genuinely thought I was going to put Toy Story 3 a bit higher. I know that there was so much love and attention and passion that was put into this film, but quite frankly, it just doesn't all work for me very much. Toy Story 3 is very much an if it ain't broke, don't fix it type of film. And for me, I feel like the filmmaking team here really tried to refine a lot of what worked in the first two films. I just feel like we hit too many of the same story beats, emotional beats, and we didn't get enough kind of new and fresh looks at this world or these characters. I guess the highlight for me of this film is the way that the themes tackle growth and change and even grief, weirdly enough. Grief for a time in your life that has passed you by, but learning how to accept change and be okay when it is time to let go of something. Though it's usually bittersweet, it's just a part of the road that we all travel. And so I think those are just some very rich themes that this film tries to tackle. For me, it really just comes down to the Sunnyside daycare aspect of this film, aka the A-plot and the thing that gets kind of the most amount of attention in terms of runtime. And so of course we've got to start with Lotso. I mean, he's just to this day like very sinister, probably the most outright evil Toy Story antagonist. I think for a lot of people, probably the most compelling antagonist of the whole series. And I'm honestly like, I like Lotso. Like he is really unhinged, but I do generally just enjoy him as a villain. He's fun and he's devious, and I think that's kind of where it ends for me in Lotso. I know that he is kind of an example of what could happen to someone like Woody if they let their jealousy and their paranoia kind of transform them into something no longer recognizable, but I think that is at this point in the series well-worn territory, and I don't think Lotso necessarily brings anything new to the table besides being the kind of darkest character in the whole series. Maybe even the most tragic character in the whole series due to just how far he has fallen. But I think it's just everything around Lotso for me that I just don't love. I really don't care for any of the side characters that are introduced in this movie. There's probably more homophobia in this movie regarding Ken than I think most people remember. And yeah, I just never found Ken to be funny. Like it's like, are we supposed to be laughing at him? It just never worked for me. And that, along with Lotso's henchmen and even the toys that we see at Bonnie's house, they're definitely the weakest group of characters that we get up until this point. And the kind of humor in this movie in general, pretty much none of it works for me, like Buzz Lightyear's Spanish mode, or I guess I'll just say that in my opinion, none of these characters bring anything new to the table. Some of them are a little bit distressing and kind of bizarre. I think they are all just kind of rehashes or versions of characters we've seen before turned up to 11. I didn't need to see Sunnyside Daycare be a police state, and I do think a moment like the incinerator is a little too contrived for me. The fact that they get kind of Deus Ex Machina out of the situation reinforces that. And so I do love how deep this film is thematically. I just don't enjoy any time that we spend at Sunnyside Daycare. I kind of don't like any of those characters very much. I do think the parts of the film that kind of bookend this story work really well as a send-off, but when it comes to the prison and prison break from Sunnyside Daycare, I really think those are some of the least compelling scenes and characters in the entire series. I know people are going to be pissed off at this because Toy Story 3 has its shooters, but hey, that's just how I feel about it, and I don't know that I will ever change. But even if you're someone who thinks this film is flawless, I hope you can at least see where I was coming from. At number 3, I have Toy Story 1. So Toy Story 1 definitely gets credit for being just honestly a brilliant concept, but I love just how efficient this movie is in introducing us to this new world. Toy Story established what would go on to be Pixar's traditional formula, and it might even be their movie that's still the very best at it to this day. Woody, Buzz, Mr. Potato Head, it's kind of hard to oversell how this would go on to define like an entire generation of childhood. Although there is a lot of exposition in this film, I think it is done pretty well, and it was so vital into taking this story seriously. What made Toy Story so iconic was the way that we were just truly invested in these characters. The main conflict of this film is Woody basically crashing out at the fear that he's going to be replaced by Buzz Lightyear, thus losing his spot as the most beloved toy in town by his kid Andy. And boy does Woody crash out. I mean, he is a total asshole, honestly. I think people who haven't seen this in a long time will definitely be surprised by just how much edge Woody has in here. This really is his come to Jesus moment, and his arc here would go on to define who he becomes for the rest of the series. And so this film is pretty existential. I mean, it tackles themes of jealousy and rejection and abandonment and pride and ego, but I think the film's biggest accomplishment is the way that it is able to tackle these themes in a way that appeals both to kids and adults. These themes of like jealousy and abandonment are primal to kids. Even when they don't kind of realize they know about these topics, they feel them and they begin to struggle with them as they get older. And the screenplay is surprisingly nuanced in the way that it kind of deals with Woody and Buzz's character arcs. That really goes a long way in making this film not only timeless, but something that you can enjoy kind of at any age. And speaking of like quotable lines, this movie has so many iconic moments and what we would think of today as vocal stims. This film really doesn't have any wasted moments. I mean, I know you don't usually have that luxury when it comes to animation, but everything here is either reinforcing the themes, the story, or the characters. And so why this film lands at this spot on my list is just because I think it relies a little bit too much on novelty. So much of this film is exposition and kind of it's necessary to introduce us to this world. When it comes to exploring characters with depth, a lot of what we get here is them telling us, not showing us. Woody's heel turn is a little too contrived for my taste, and that kind of goes the same with Buzz and the other toys that we get like Mr. Potato Head as well as Rex and Ham. And you know, I love Sid for the vibes. And so although I think these characters are brilliantly conceived, I think that they end up kind of just being caricatures in this first movie. So although Toy Story 1 has like scene after scene of memorable moments, I just think like any great series, this world and these characters really get to shine the more time that we get to spend with them. And I think that everything here is just better served in the future iterations. And so I love Toy Story 1. I just think I love the other films in this franchise a little bit more. And at number 2, I have Toy Story 4. Anyone that was already pissed off at me, here is Toy Story 4 at my number 2 spot. It's hard to describe how much I loved this film when it first came out. I just want to make it clear to everyone, like I grew up with Toy Story 1 and 2 and 3. Like I am a 90s baby. So with any great Toy Story movie, Toy Story 4 really gives us a great theme to chew on. Toy Story 4 is very existential and it is concerned with purpose, with what it means to have meaning in our lives and what it means to lose your purpose and to kind of find a new one. And these themes are literally personified by the introduction of Forky. So just taking one look at Forky, you might assume he's a character that is going to pander to an even younger audience. You're like, oh great, are they trying to do a Minions thing here? But Forky ends up being the key to the whole movie and why it works as well as it does. And so Toy Story 4 is first and foremost a Woody story, as we find all the toys in the care of Bonnie now, but we find Woody in a bit of a midlife crisis as he spends more time being left behind by Bonnie than he does being played with. And so when Forky comes in as a pile of trash who has no interest in Bonnie or in being a toy, it really sets off Woody's existential journey into discovering what his purpose really is. And so Forky, along with Woody's old flame, Miss Bo Peep, and as Forky is slowly starting to understand what it even means to be alive, Bo Peep is a toy that has completely found her own independence and no longer relies on others to give her life meaning. And so I think this is just a really interesting journey for Woody to go on, as he struggles to unpack the fact that he hasn't really gotten over Andy and his life hasn't really moved on since then. And so everyone's main criticism about Toy Story 4 is that they feel like the story really should have ended at number 3. I really just love their angle on these characters in Toy Story 4 and that we're able to take Woody into a fresh and new direction. And we're kind of not rehashing what we did in the previous films, much like Toy Story 3 did. And I really do like the new characters that we get in this film, like Keanu Reeves as Duke Kaboom and Key and Peele, who kind of just play themselves. And it's funny because this is very much an artifact of the 2010s, where nowadays you're not really going to see Key and Peele as like a self-insert type of characters, but they work here, so I can't complain. And I do like Gabby Gabby as the villain here, and while she is really creepy here, she has a bit more of a redemptive arc. And Gabby doesn't get nearly as much of a focus as Lotso did, but she works in tandem with some of the new characters like Forky, Duke Kaboom, and the return of Bo Peep to really reinforce the themes, like not trying to recapture past glory, but to be who you are right now. And so the focus on all of these new characters does mean that our original cast gets sidelined a little bit. Buzz does get a little bit to do here, and Jesse and the rest of the crew get even less, but that's okay in my opinion, because a character like Forky is given more depth in just this one movie than Rex or Ham or Mr. Potato Head ever got, and they were always kind of comedic relief to begin with, so I'm okay with the fact that we are not retreading the same territory much like Toy Story 3 already did, but rather we are given more compelling dynamics in this film, like that between Bo Peep, Woody, Forky, Gabby Gabby. And part of what keeps me coming back to this film too is just the sense of momentum. I think this is maybe the best paced film in the entire series. I like the fact that we get straight to the point with Gabby Gabby and that her part in this story is not overly drawn out. And so Toy Story 4 flies by with an impressive amount of cohesion and focus and ends with a really emotional payoff, which is resonant and also unexpected, but very well earned. And so that's it. Like, I just love Toy Story 4, and I'm really just so surprised Pixar was able to pull this off with the 4th movie in the franchise. I really encourage you to give Toy Story 4 another shot if you had written it off, because I think it's a really great movie regardless of where anyone thinks the story should have ended. And so at number 1, we have, of course, Toy Story 2. I mean, this movie is as classic as it gets. We've got everyone at the height of their powers here, where the team was able to take all of the lessons from Toy Story 1 and really improve upon them and bring this world into new directions without becoming a rehash like some of the later films in the franchise might feel like. And I feel like that is best exemplified by the characters that we get introduced here. I mean, Jesse, Bullseye, and even Stinky Pete became like main cast staples instantly, unlike the new characters in any other of the films. And I mean, this is just like the comfort film of the franchise, whether that's due to the Old West theme here or the greatest scene in all of 20th century cinema. But I just love the way that this film tries to keep things simple, where the characters are all a bit more fleshed out and well realized. They're neither as much of caricatures as they are in Toy Story 1 or 3, and the main conflict here with Woody being stolen by the shady toy collector Big Al really toes a perfect balance of being silly and suspenseful. And the rescue mission Buzz puts together really gives a lot of the supporting characters time to shine. And I think really what Toy Story 2 does best is just the balance. I mean, no toys get left behind here. And I don't mean like that, but there is something so sad about this movie at times, but also just something so reassuring. And the conflict here with Woody being caught between two worlds is kept simple, and I think it just works better than it does anywhere else in the series. And all of the little improvements that they were able to implement here on Toy Story 2 also makes this the most timeless film in the series. And Toy Story 2 is just something that comes together to be greater than the sum of its parts, because almost every aspect of this film is great, and that allows it to feel more cohesive than the first film, which at times felt more like a collection of memorable scenes. And this film also has the biggest emotional gut punch of the entire series. And yeah, just everything here is working in perfect harmony in my opinion. And I do think it's kind of funny I don't have that much to say about my favorite film in this entire franchise, but everything in this movie is just so well realized. I mean, it was able to expand on Toy Story 1 while not being as thorny as Toy Story 3 or 4, and much like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, this is just a fully realized vision and one of the best movies Pixar has ever made, while having the highest highs of the series but also really none of the lows. And so I think I'm just gonna have to leave it at that, you know? Toy Story 2 is my number 1. So to anyone who made it this far, just honestly thank thank you for watching. I appreciate it, and please just let me know what your ranking is. You can yell at me all you want about how Toy Story 3 is the best in the franchise. It's totally okay to disagree, but yeah, just thank you again, guys, and I will see you in the next one.